Under the quiet ceiling of my first breath, two shadows leaned closer than walls, one shaped like patience, the other like prayer. They arrived before language, before my name learned to walk, before the sky decided what color my days would be. In the beginning, their shadows were taller than fear, stretching from dawn to dusk, guarding the fragile syllable of my existence. My mother's shadow smelled of warm bread and lullabies, of sleepless nights folded neatly into smiles she never returned. Her hands were soft roofs, under which storms forgot their anger. My father's shadow carried the weight of unsaid worries, creased brows, and dreams postponed like letters never posted. His silence spoke a language only sacrifice understands. I learned to walk by stepping into their shadows, stumbling, falling, but never alone. The ground was kinder when shaded by their faith. When the world sharpened its teeth, their shadows became shields, absorbing the blows of fate, so my skin could remain unbroken, so my heart could still believe. In mercy, they stood between me and hunger, between me and cold, between me and the cruel arithmetic of survival. I never saw the cost, only the comfort. At night, when the house slept, and the clock whispered its tired ticking, their shadows stayed awake, counting worries like beads, praying my tomorrow would be lighter than their today. I mistook their shadows for certainty, for permanence, for something time would never dare to erase. I did not know shadows grow thinner as the sun moves away. In my youth, I ran ahead of them, chasing my own light, forgetting that my courage was borrowed. Their shadows followed quietly, never asking to be thanked. I spoke harsh words once, careless, sharp as broken glass. Their shadows flinched, but did not retreat. Forgiveness, I learned, is a habit parents master. Without applause, my mother's shadow held my secrets, even the ones I hid from myself. She knew when my laughter was fake, when my strength was only noise. Still, she fed me hope with the same hands that wiped my tears. My father's shadow taught me how to stand without leaning on excuses. He showed me dignity through endurance, honor through hunger, and love through responsibility, carried without complaint. As years passed, their shadows began to tremble, edges softening, length shortening. Time, the ruthless sculptor, started carving absence into presence. I noticed wrinkles before I noticed fear. I noticed silence before I noticed fatigue. I noticed their shadows fading only when the nights grew louder inside my chest. One day, I realized I was taller than the shadows that once covered me completely. The discovery felt like betrayal, like standing in sunlight while winter waited behind me. Now, their shadows rest at my feet, smaller, quieter, yet heavier than ever. They carry years I can never return, dreams I unknowingly spent. When my mother walks, her shadow pauses to breathe. When my father sits, his shadow leans carefully, as if afraid to fall. I want to gather their shadows, fold them gently, and place them back into their younger bodies. But time does not accept apologies, only memories. So I stand closer now, offering my own shadow as shelter. I speak softly, because love at this stage is fragile as evening light. I understand at last, their shadows were never weak. They were strong enough to carry me until I could carry myself. When the final dusk arrives and their shadows dissolve into the long night, I will still feel them behind me, guiding my steps through remembered warmth. For even in darkness, a parent's shadow remains, not on the ground, but inside the child. They never stopped protecting. Even after sleep claims their voices, their shadows whisper instructions. To my conscience, they ask me to be gentle, where the world demands hardness, to be honest, where shortcuts glitter like lies. I see my mother in the way I worry too much, in how I save small things for later, believing later will always come. Her shadow stitched caution into my bones. I see my father in my pauses before decisions, in the way I measure consequences, like a merchant weighing grain. His shadow taught me that recklessness is loud, but responsibility survives quietly. Sometimes guilt visits me without knocking. It asks why I did not sit longer, listen deeper, say thank you more often. Their shadows answer by forgiving me again. In old photographs, their shadows stand straight, confident, unaware of the years ahead. I stare at those images, like a traveler studying maps of a country that no longer exists. They gave me roots before I ever asked for wings. They let me fly without charging rent for the sky. Their shadows stayed on the ground, watching, waiting for my return. When I failed, I blamed the wind. When I succeeded, I called it talent. Only now do I admit it was their shadows, holding the balance. Their love was not loud. It did not announce itself with fireworks or promises. It arrived daily, like sunrise, expected, unquestioned, until missed. I remember sickness, how my mother's shadow never slept when I burned with fever, how my father's shadow counted money twice, then chose my medicine over his comfort. The house remembers them too. Walls lean with their habits, doors echo their patience, and floors carry the weight of footsteps that taught me what home means. Sometimes I walk alone at dusk just to see my shadow stretch. I wonder if one day someone will stand beneath it and feel safe. If that happens, I will know their shadows succeeded. Age has turned the world impatient, but their shadows taught me to slow down, to listen, to hold silence without fear. When my voice rises, I hear my father's warning. When my hands tremble, I feel my mother's prayer. Their shadows correct me without humiliation. They never demanded repayment. They never kept records. Their generosity erased its own tracks, leaving me rich and unaware of the debt. Now I count it carefully, not in money, but in moments. A glass of water offered gently, a blanket placed quietly, a question asked with concern. These are the coins their shadows taught me to spend. I fear the day their shadows no longer walk beside me, when memories must do the work of presence. I rehearse strength, but grief does not accept rehearsals. Still, their shadows prepare me, even for loss. They say, stand straight. Love does not end. It changes location. So I gather their stories, their habits, their unfinished sentences, and carry them forward, like a sacred inheritance. When the world asks who raised me, I point to the ground behind me and say nothing, because shadows need no introductions. They are proof that someone stood between you and the sun, between you and the storm, long enough for you to learn how to stand alone. There are days when I argue with fate, asking why love must age, why strength must bend, why hands that once lifted worlds now tremble over teacups. Their shadows answer patiently, everything precious is temporary, so learn to hold it carefully. I notice how time has taught my mother to smile through tired eyes. Her shadow moves slower now, but it still circles me first, as if danger might return. Out of habit, my father's shadow has learned the art of sitting. Once it marched beside him, wide and unafraid. Now it rests, leaning on memories, like an old friend. I wonder how many dreams they folded away to make space for mine, how many roads they never walked, so my feet could wander freely. Their shadows never complain about the distance they gave up. In moments of success, I feel embarrassed by joy. I want to divide it, hand portions back to the shadows that invested first. But joy does not travel backward, only gratitude does. I speak gratitude aloud now, slowly, clearly, so their shadows can hear it. Words are late, but silence would be cruel. When neighbors speak of wealth, I think of evenings where food was simple, but love was excessive. Their shadows knew how to cook hope out of almost nothing. I remember storms beating against our windows. Fear howled like wind. Their shadows stood firm, teaching me that calm is also a form of courage. There were arguments too, cracks in voices, doors closing harder than needed. Yet even then, their shadows never left the house. They slept on forgiveness and woke up kind. As a child, I thought parents were unbreakable. As an adult, I see the fractures. As a child again, I choose to love them anyway, fully, without conditions. Their shadows have become my moral compass. When I lose direction, I step back into their outline and remember who I am supposed to be. One day, I will tell my children about these shadows, not as ghosts, but as guardians, made of patience and prayer. I will say, walk carefully, you are standing on sacrifices. If I raise my voice, may it never drown out kindness. If I raise my hand, may it only bless. These vows are carved from their shadows. When night grows long, I talk to them softly. Even if they sleep, their shadows listen. Love does not require answers, only presence. The sun keeps moving, dragging shadows with it, changing their shapes, shortening their reach. But no matter the hour, their shade has already done its most important work. It made a human out of uncertainty, taught a heart how to remain human in a hard world. So when my shadow falls behind me, thin, imperfect, trying to imitate what came before, I hope it carries even a fraction of the mercy that raised me, because parents do not leave children. They simply move from the ground into the soul. There are mornings when the house feels heavier, as if the walls themselves are remembering. I walk softly then, afraid to wake the years, sleeping in corners. My mother's shadow still checks on me, even when I pretend strength. It adjusts my collar, smooths invisible dust from my shoulders, and reminds me that being tired is not the same as being weak. My father's shadow counts my steps, not to control, but to ensure I do not stumble over pride. It believes humility is the strongest armor. I realize now, they raised me twice, once with their hands, and again with their absence. From complaint, they never showed me how much it hurt to always choose me first. When the world praises me, their shadows stand quietly behind, not asking for recognition. They know applause fades, but character endures. Sometimes regret arrives.
Wearing familiar clothes.
It asks why I didn't ask. More questions, why I didn't record their voices when they were loud, why I assumed tomorrow was guaranteed. Their shadows forgive again, as if forgiveness were their native language. I see my mother in the way I worry about others before myself. I see my father in the way I endure silently when escape is easier. Their shadows rearranged my nature without permission, without ceremony. As years stack like books, I flip through chapters, too quickly skipped. I pause now, reading them slowly, learning meanings I missed. There was a time I wanted to leave everything behind. Their shadows stayed calm, knowing return is part of growth. Roots do not argue with wings. When illness visits them, fear knocks loudly at my chest. I hold their hands and feel how small time truly is. Their shadows squeeze back, saying nothing, teaching bravery without speech. I understand now, love is not dramatic. It is repetitive. It shows up daily, unchanged, until change becomes unavoidable. Their shadows taught me how to love without keeping score, how to give without expecting echoes. This lesson was expensive. I paid nothing. If I ever complain about life, may their shadows remind me how much was already done before I arrived. May gratitude interrupt my anger. When the sun lowers, casting long, tired shapes, I stand between them, a bridge of borrowed light. Their shadows meet at my feet, as if agreeing, I am the continuation. One day, I will be someone's shadow too, standing quietly, absorbing heat, blocking storms, never asking to be noticed. And if my shadow ever grows weary, may it remember the ones that taught it how to endure, because parents do not merely give life, they give direction, they give shelter, they give themselves, piece by piece, until only shadows remain. And even then, those shadows are enough to guide a lifetime. There are evenings when the sky turns the color of memory, and I feel their presence more than their voices. It is then I realize how much of my breathing was learned by watching them endure. My mother's shadow still hums old lullabies into the silence of my thoughts. Even now, it believes rest is sacred, and worry is a guest that should never stay too long. My father's shadow keeps standing guard over my decisions. It asks simple questions. Is this honest? Is this necessary? Will this hurt someone? And I answer carefully. I used to think love was something you felt. They taught me it is something you do, even when feeling disappears. Under exhaustion, their shadows have memorized my weaknesses. They do not shame them. They build patience around them, like fences around fragile gardens. Sometimes I catch myself becoming them, my mother in my concern, my father in my restraint. Surprises me, then comforts me. I remember the first time I saw fear in their eyes. It was brief, quickly hidden, but it stayed with me. That was the day I learned. Parents are brave, not fearless. Their shadows protected my childhood from knowing too much, too soon. They let innocence finish its season. Now the world feels loud, demanding, sharp-edged. Their shadows still soften it, rounding corners. Before I collide with them, I carry their sayings, simple phrases, spoken casually once, now guiding me like scripture. Wisdom often enters quietly. When loneliness comes, I sit with it instead of running. My mother's shadow taught me patience with pain. My father's shadow taught me endurance without bitterness. There were nights they stayed awake so I could sleep peacefully.